Hi everyone, today I'm going to film something about emptiness. Now for those of you who've been following this at all, this is the absolutely critical time when your children go off to university, and often it's actually a very exciting time for you in the run-up to it. And it gets exciting because it's fun for them, because you start going on shopping trips, you start buying everything from duvets to cutlery to all sorts of bits, and then all of a sudden the day is here and you drive them there. And then you've got all the boxes and the very duvet and the covers and everything else, and they're all wrapped and they're all beautifully put together, and you take them up into their dorm or whatever it is that they go to. And then comes that moment when you have no choice, but you have to just give them a very big fat hug and then you say goodbye. And so the time really when this is at its most painful is a very curious mixture, because there's less time to think about it in the run-up. There's a terrible immediate impact where you're desperate not to cry or not to get too upset when you give them a great fat hug and gently push them away and say, have fun then. And it's all artificial, and you know in your heart that's not really how you're feeling. But you drive away because you don't have any choice. And then as you drive away, and those of you who've been following my story at all know that I actually had to take both of mine within only a very short period of time at exactly the same time of that year. So mine was an enormous wrench, but for anybody it can be a huge wrench. So I think there are a couple of reasons why that is the case. I mean, first of all, it's emotional because it's huge. You know, there's a big gap in your life where they used to fill, they used to be great fun, they would be thrilling, or they would be your confidant or your friend or just your much loved son or daughter, and they're not there. And that feels huge in a physical way as well, because you sit down and you're going to have supper and there's no reason to cook for them now, and sometimes in my case there's no reason to cook at all, and that was a big deal for me. I had quite a problem even thinking about food well enough. Obviously I got hungry, I just didn't go sort of to the trouble because it just didn't seem any point, which is a bit silly, I know, but it just takes a while, that's all. And therefore psychologically you're also struggling because there's been this huge amount of love, an outpouring of love, unconditional love really for your child for, 17, 18 years, depending on how old they are when they go. And it's just huge because all of a sudden there is no one to give that to. There's no one giving it back. And so you can feel very empty and very bereft. And I have a lot of sympathy with this. And they've had a place in your life and now they're just not around the same. And that's coming, in particularly acutely at the weekends. So I think here's some tips. These are not perfect. They were my attempt to be able to cope. And I think this is the reason why I want to offer them to you. Number one, which is really important, is please try and remember there is no substitute for you in their life. None. If you were their parent before, you're still their parent now. If they used to come to you for advice or thoughts or fun or input or grounding and help and a hug, they will still want to do that even if it's virtual. So don't be entirely surprised, actually, if far from going anywhere in your life, they have really only gone somewhere geographically and they're still the same person and so are you, and therefore the role and the whole connection has not gone. And I think the second thing really is, try and not feel too bereft by thinking genuinely about practical tips so that you can still continue to stay in touch with them. So when you, for example, go on an app like BBC Good Food and you spot a really great recipe for your son or your daughter, send it to them. And if there's a bit of fun that you've got as a practical tip, like ironing or washing things, or don't forget to use whatever temperature, this kind of thing, just have a little bit of fun, help them, but maybe don't pepper them with stuff. And particularly if they reach out and say, Mum, can you give me an idea for supper for this evening? I've got 5 friends coming round. Enjoy that, but don't feel lost and sad when you have to do that. Think to yourself, well, that's really great, they still need me, that's lovely, because they do need you. They're not grown-ups yet, they're not adults yet, they still need you, and your teaching and your toolkit and everything that you've got is still incredibly valuable to them. I think if you do want a regular time to chat with them, by all means do try and see if you can put that into place. For example, I used to find Sunday afternoons or evenings were really a good opportunity, but don't be too unhappy if that doesn't happen one particular week, because that's the whole point. You really should be letting your child, tell you if they're having a load of fun so that they don't actually need you too much. Now, in a negative way. Now, point number 4 is look, this is just my thoughts. If you want to keep all of their pictures about you, and if you even want to carry one with you, I understand. And if you love their favourite toy or you love their bedroom, I understand. But I am gently asking you, be aware that if you go and sit in there and you sit on their bed and you just sit and cry, you can really feel very, very low indeed. And it's just a recipe I felt for loneliness. So instead of that, I kept a beautiful picture of both my two looking totally happy on my screensaver on my phone, and therefore I could see them, and then I could send them the odd message, hi, I'm doing fine, thanks for remembering, bit of fun, bit of humour, it would be uplifting. And I think, unfortunately, if I'm very honest, there were a couple of things I needed to begin to do. I had to pull myself up and out of it, and I actually asked my friends. So the 5th tip is that I think, because you can pretty much anticipate this is going to happen to you or not, consider reaching out to 2 or 3 of your friends and saying to them, do you know what, you could really help me with this gap or this phase. I'm not going to be the best of life and soul of the party, but please can you remember for the next 2 or 3 weeks to ask me out for a coffee, and I will come. I will make myself, I might not stay too long, but because I'm not feeling quite so good, but I will come, and I will come out for a drink, or I'll go and do something different and a change. Ring the changes a little bit and push yourself just a little bit, but go with really much loved friends who totally understand where you're at. Or even if they're not going through it themselves, explain yourself to them and help them help you. And I think really the final one, to be honest, was that I was very busy at work. And I told myself, work's not going anywhere, I still need to rock up. Whilst I did explain that I wasn't feeling 100% and that they just needed to cut me some slack for a bit, this is where it's extremely similar to a form of grief, but it isn't the same. Your children are coming back, and that's what you really need to remember. And actually, if you've still got other children around, it's almost even more vital that you are there for them too, doing all the same things for them, and particularly if they also feel like they miss him or her. And so big fat hugs all round, popcorn evening for a makeshift cinema evening or something where you're sitting watching the TV and you're chomping together and you have fun, but think positively, think constructively, they will be back. Okay, and funnily enough, they'll probably be back even sooner rather than later, because often there's the phone call home which says I'm homesick or I need you or something. And even in the worst case, it's 8-9 weeks, and there'll always be something really great to look forward to. And that's the next thing you can start to plan. So do hope you're going to be okay. Empty nest is not easy, but you can do things about it. And I hope these creative tips have been useful. Bye for now.